The galaxy had been quiet for 3,000 years. Not the good kind of quiet where everyone gets along, but the scary kind where nobody dares to make a sound. The Galactic Council had made sure of that with something they called the Sacred Covenant. It was basically a rule that said no fighting, no wars, no getting angry enough to actually do something about it. When humans first stumbled into this cosmic neighborhood 200 years ago, they were like the new kid at school who accidentally sits at the wrong lunch table. The aliens took one look at humanity's history books, saw all those wars and conflicts, and decided these Earth people needed babysitters, serious babysitters with spaceships and weapons that could turn planets into space dust. Commander Kim Tae-ho had been dealing with these cosmic babysitters for most of his military career, and frankly, he was getting tired of it. Today was just another example of why. His ship, the UES Defiance, was surrounded by sleek alien vessels that looked like they were made of liquid silver and bad intentions. These were the Keepers, and they were here to stop him from doing his job. Down on the planet below, human colonists were running for their lives. The Vorthons, insect-like creatures with too many teeth and not enough conscience, had decided that human settlements made great target practice. Tae-ho's Marines had been down there for 6 hours, trying to protect families, children, anyone who couldn't fight back. They'd been winning too, which was apparently the problem. The voice that spoke in his head felt like ice water being poured directly into his brain. Commander Kim Tae-ho of the human vessel, you will cease all military operations immediately. Your species approaches the boundary of acceptable aggression levels. Tae-ho gritted his teeth and watched his tactical display. His Marines had taken out 37 Vorthon raiders, 37 out of nearly 400. The rest were already pulling back, knowing that the cosmic hall monitors would make sure the humans couldn't follow up on their advantage. Keeper, vessel, we're defending civilian targets, Tae-ho said into his comm, trying to keep his voice level. Those colonists down there have children, families. Irrelevant. The covenant must be maintained. Withdraw your forces or face intervention. And that was it. Game over. Tae-ho had seen this dance before. The Keepers didn't care about context, didn't care about right or wrong. They only cared about keeping humans from fighting too hard, even when their lives depended on it. The Vorthons could raid and burn and kill, as long as they kept it below whatever magical number the Council had decided was acceptable. But the moment humans fought back effectively, down came the hammer. Back on Earth, President Lee Min-ho was having the worst day of his administration, which was saying something considering he'd already dealt with 3 economic crises and a solar flare that knocked out half of Asia's power grid. The reports coming in from the outer colonies painted a picture that made his stomach churn. 17 different alien species were taking bites out of human space. Not big bites, nothing dramatic enough to trigger a full Keeper response against them, just little nibbles here and there. A mining station destroyed, a transport convoy attacked, a research outpost going silent. Each attack was small enough to be called a minor territorial dispute by the Council, but when you added them all up, humans were bleeding from 1,000 small cuts. The worst part wasn't even the attacks themselves, it was the pattern. These weren't random acts of violence or simple piracy. Someone had done their homework. Every attack hit human infrastructure at just the right level to cause maximum damage while staying below the threshold that would bring serious Keeper attention down on the attackers. It was like being slowly murdered by someone who'd carefully studied exactly how much they could hurt you without getting in trouble. General Cho Kyung-soo spread the holographic display across the conference table and the room fell silent. Red dots marked ongoing attacks, yellow showed recent withdrawals, and green indicated the few places where humans had been allowed to defend themselves successfully. The green dots were pathetically few. Sir, they're not just raiding us, Kyung-soo said quietly. They're testing us. Every engagement is designed to probe our defenses, learn our capabilities, and map our responses. This isn't piracy. It's intelligence gathering on a massive scale. Min-ho studied the display for a long time. Somewhere out there, human children were growing up under alien skies, never knowing if today would be the day the raiders came back. Human families were living in fear while their own government was forbidden from protecting them properly. How long until the covenant expires? He asked. 14 months, Mr. President, but they'll expect us to renew automatically. Every species does. Minho looked around the room at his advisors, his generals, his diplomatic staff. They all knew what he was thinking. They could all see the same writing on the wall. The covenant wasn't protecting humanity. It was slowly strangling them. Draft, a formal notice to the Galactic Council, he said quietly. Inform them that when our current covenant period expires, we will not be seeking renewal. The room erupted in worried voices, but Minho held up his hand. Sometimes the only way to save your people was to risk everything. The galaxy was about to learn what humans were really capable of when the gloves came off. The news hit the Galactic Council like a meteor strike. In 3,000 years of the Sacred Covenant, no species had ever voluntarily walked away from protection. Sure, plenty had been kicked out for breaking the rules, but nobody just said, thanks but no thanks, and left. The very idea was so crazy that most council members thought it was some kind of translation error. High Chancellor Vextar didn't believe in translation errors. The ancient being had lived through the rise and fall of dozens of civilizations, had seen species burn themselves to ash in wars that lasted centuries. When the crystalline entity materialized in the council chambers, the air itself seemed to vibrate with barely contained power. Ambassador Park Ji-woo had been preparing for this moment for weeks, but standing face to face with something that could probably crush his mind like an empty soda can still made his knees want to buckle. The human delegation stood in a semicircle, trying to look more confident than they felt, while hundreds of alien representatives watched from the gallery above. You do not comprehend the magnitude of what you propose. Vextar's voice echoed. Through dimensions that human ears weren't designed to hear, the Sacred Covenant has maintained galactic peace for 3 millennia. Your species, while limited in scope, possesses military capabilities that could cause considerable suffering if unleashed without restraint. Ji-woo had practiced this speech 100 times in front of mirrors, hollow projectors, and increasingly frustrated diplomatic coaches. But all that preparation felt useless now, standing in front of beings that could read his thoughts if they wanted to. He took a deep breath and tried to channel every ounce of righteous anger he'd felt watching reports from the outer colonies. With respect, Chancellor, we've been under systematic attack for 18 months. Our colonies are burning. Our people are dying. And your keepers ensure we can't respond effectively. The Covenant protects everyone in this galaxy except us. The massive chamber erupted in what could generously be called debate, but sounded more like the universe's worst argument. Vortans clicked and chittered their objections in frequencies that made human teeth ache. The Bruthans, massive bear-like creatures who controlled half the galaxy's heavy industry, roared their disapproval so loudly that the chamber's sound dampeners started smoking. Dozens of other species added their voices to the chaos, creating a symphony of alien outrage. Through it all, Vextar remained perfectly still, those crystalline features showing no emotion at all. Ji-woo activated his holographic projector, and suddenly the chamber filled with images that made the noise die down fast. Colony after colony, burning. Evacuation ships cut down as they tried to escape. Children's playgrounds turned to glass by energy weapons. Hospital ships destroyed while loading wounded civilians. These are your minor territorial disputes, Ji-woo said, his voice carrying clearly in the sudden silence. 40,000 human lives lost in what you call acceptable parameters. When we defended ourselves on Kepler 442b, your keepers intervened after we'd eliminated exactly 37 raiders. 37, out of nearly 400. The rest withdrew with 90% of their force intact and returned to finish the job 2 weeks later. A Vorthan representative scuttled forward on too many legs, its insectoid head weaving back and forth. The humans exaggerate their losses to gain sympathy. Our interactions with their colonies have been within established guidelines for resource acquisition. Resource acquisition? Ji-woo's diplomatic training went out the window. You call murdering civilians resource acquisition? The Covenant allows for territorial expansion through controlled conflict. The Vorthan clicked. Your species signed the agreement. You accepted the terms. That's when Ji-woo realized the horrible truth. The attacks weren't just random violence or simple piracy. They were legal under Covenant law. The galaxy's idea of peace wasn't the absence of war, it was war with rules. Rules that happened to put humanity at a massive disadvantage. Chancellor Vextar raised one crystalline appendage, and the chamber fell silent instantly. You have 6 months remaining under your current covenant terms. I strongly advise you to use this time wisely. Consider carefully what existence without a keeper protection truly means. No species in recorded history has survived long in a state of unrestricted warfare. Your aggressive tendencies will consume you as they have consumed so many others. As the human delegation prepared to leave, Captain Han So-young remained behind. The intelligence operative had spent years perfecting the art of being invisible in plain sight, and today that skill was about to pay off in ways she couldn't imagine. Her cybernetic implants, carefully shielded from alien detection systems, recorded everything that happened after the humans left. She watched Vorthon representatives meet with Bruthan war chiefs in shadowy corners of the chamber. She listened to casual conversations about betting pools on how long humanity would last before begging to return to keeper protection. Most disturbing of all, she discovered that the raids weren't just legal under Covenant law, they were coordinated. The Harvest Circle, they called themselves. 7 species working together to systematically weaken human defenses and map their capabilities. The plan was simple and brutal in its efficiency. Let the humans destroy themselves in unrestricted warfare, then move in to strip mine human space, while the survivors were too weak to resist. So-young's blood ran cold as she listened to casualty estimates and resource allocation plans. These beings were already dividing up human territory like it was a corporate merger. They'd studied human history, seen the wars and conflicts, and decided that without keeper restraints, humans would burn themselves out within a year. As she made her way back to the human transport, So-young couldn't help but smile. The galaxy was about to learn that they had fundamentally misunderstood what they were dealing with. Humans hadn't been restrained by the Covenant to protect the galaxy from human aggression. They'd been restrained to protect the galaxy from human ingenuity. The countdown had begun, and nobody in that chamber had any idea what was coming. The moment the Covenant expired, humanity's true face was revealed to the galaxy. For 2 centuries, the Keepers had monitored every human military installation, every weapons test, every strategic discussion. What they hadn't seen were the projects hidden in asteroid mines, the research conducted in spaces between dimensions, and the weapons development that had been disguised as civilian infrastructure. The Harvest Circle didn't waste any time. Within 6 hours of the Covenant's expiration, 17 coordinated strikes hit human space simultaneously. They expected to face the same limited resistance they'd encountered for years. Instead, they walked into a trap that had been 200 years in the making. Admiral Kim Sung-min had been waiting for this moment his entire career. From the bridge of his flagship, he watched the Vorthan Hive fleet drop out of hyperspace near New Geneva. 200 ships, 500,000 warrior drones, enough firepower to glass a planet. They'd raided this system 12 times before, never facing more than a handful of human patrol ships. This time was different. Admiral, the Vorthan fleet is maintaining standard attack formation, his tactical officer reported. They're not even bothering with defensive screens. Sung-min almost felt sorry for them. Almost. Then he remembered the footage from their last raid, children running through burning streets while Vorthan warriors hunted them for sport. His sympathy evaporated like morning mist. All units. This is Admiral Kim. You are weapons-free. No prisoners, no survivors, no mercy. Show them what happens when you mess with human families. The weapons that unleashed hell on the Vorthan fleet had never been seen before in galactic warfare. Plasma cannons that could crack moons fired streams of contained starfire across impossible distances. Kinetic bombardment systems turned nearby asteroids into planet-killing projectiles that moved at significant fractions of light speed. Most terrifying of all were the swarm missiles, artificial intelligences in miniature that learned and adapted with each passing second. The Vorthan hive mind had coordinated millions of warriors across dozens of star systems for centuries. It had never experienced fear because individual Vorthans were expendable, replaceable. But as human weapons tore through their fleet like tissue paper, Something new entered their collective consciousness. For the first time in their species' history, the hive mind screamed. The battle lasted exactly 47 minutes. When the weapons fire stopped, 200 Vorthon ships had become expanding clouds of superheated gas and twisted metal. The few escape pods that managed to launch were tracked down by hunter-killer drones that eliminated them with surgical precision. The final transmission from the Vorthon flagship was a sound that would haunt the dreams of every species in the galaxy. Pure undiluted terror, broadcast across every hive mind frequency, a warning that arrived too late for the other Harvest Circle fleets already engaging human forces. On Bruthen Prime, War Chief Gorthak received reports that defied everything he thought he knew about warfare. Human fleets were moving through space at impossible speeds, their ships appearing in star systems that should have been days away. Their weapons bypassed defensive shields that had protected Bruthen worlds for 1,000 years. Worst of all, they fought with a cold, methodical efficiency that left no room for surrender or negotiation. "How many ships do they have?" Gorthak demanded, his massive claws tearing gouges in the metal briefing table. "Unknown, War Chief. Every engagement shows different vessels. Their industrial capacity appears to have been severely understated in our intelligence reports." Gorthak's chief intelligence officer, a scarred veteran who had survived raids on 50 different worlds, spoke with the careful tone of someone delivering very bad news. "War Chief, I believe we have made a fundamental error in our assessment. The humans were not contained by the Keepers to protect us from their current military capabilities. They were contained to prevent them from developing the weapons we now face." The truth was more terrifying than anyone in the Harvest Circle had imagined. Humanity had spent 2 centuries in secret development, pushing the boundaries of physics and engineering while pretending to be constrained by Covenant limitations. They had built quantum tunneling drives that made faster-than-light travel instantaneous. They had created artificial intelligence systems that could outthink any organic mind in milliseconds. Most horrifying of all, they had learned to weaponize space-time itself, turning gravity wells into crushing weapons and making stars into ammunition. Every human defeat over the past 2 centuries had been studied, analyzed, and learned from. Every limitation imposed by the Keepers had been worked around, circumvented, or simply ignored through technological innovation. While the galaxy thought humanity was being held back, humans had been building a military machine unlike anything the universe had ever seen. The Molthari, ancient traders who had profited from selling salvage from human colonies, watched their home fleet disappear in bursts of contained antimatter. The Skrix energy beings who fed on the life force of dying civilizations found themselves facing weapons that could disrupt their very existence. One by one, the members of the Harvest Circle discovered that their prey had become the predator. Within 72 hours, the coordinated attack on human space had become a rout. Harvest Circle fleets that had expected easy victories instead found themselves fighting for survival against an enemy that seemed to anticipate their every move. Human forces didn't just win battles, they annihilated opposition so completely that nothing remained to threaten human civilians ever again. The galaxy held its breath as reports filtered in from the combat zones. Humanity hadn't just been freed from their restraints, they had been preparing for this moment for generations. The question now wasn't whether humans could survive without Keeper protection, but whether anyone else could survive with humans unleashed. 3 months after humanity broke free from the Covenant, the galaxy woke up to a new and terrifying reality. The Harvest Circle wasn't just defeated, they were gone. Not scattered or weakened, but completely erased from existence with a thoroughness that made even ancient species feel sick to their stomachs. The Vorthon hive worlds, once teeming with billions of insectoid warriors, sat empty and silent. Every egg chamber had been sterilized, every hive queen eliminated, every last trace of their civilization wiped clean. Human ships patrolled the dead systems now, broadcasting warning messages in 17 different languages that all said the same thing. This species chose to prey on human children. This is what happens to predators. The Bruthen industrial complexes that had supplied weapons to raiders for decades drifted through space as radioactive tombs. Their massive shipyards, capable of building planet cracker weapons, had been turned. into twisted metal sculptures that would glow with deadly radiation for the next 1,000 years. The message was clear. If you profited from human suffering, you would pay the price. But it was the complete disappearance of 6 other species that really got the galaxy's attention. The Scrix, energy beings who had fed on dying human colonies, simply vanished one day. Their home dimension went dark, their energy signatures disappeared from sensors, and nobody knew how the humans had even found them, let alone destroyed them. The Ralketh, shape-shifting pirates who specialized in infiltrating refugee ships, left behind empty space where their star system used to be. Emergency sessions of the Galactic Council became a daily occurrence, and for the first time in recorded history, the meetings were filled with genuine fear rather than diplomatic posturing. Chancellor Vextar's crystalline form flickered with distress patterns that hadn't been seen since the last great galactic war 3 millennia ago. This level of systematic elimination exceeds all our projections. Our modeling indicated that humanity would engage in self-destructive behavior when released from Covenant restraints. Instead, they have demonstrated strategic capabilities that surpass our understanding of warfare itself. The remaining council members, many representing species that had suddenly developed a deep interest in non-aggression pacts with humanity, listened in uncomfortable silence. Ambassador Park Ji-woo stood before them, but he was no longer the desperate diplomat who had pleaded for protection months earlier. Behind him, holographic displays showed human fleets moving through contested space with a precision that rewrote military textbooks. "You wanted to know what humans do when you stop holding us back," Ji-woo said, his voice carrying the quiet confidence of someone whose people had just proven they were the apex predators of the galaxy. "Now you know. We don't fight wars for territory or resources or pride. We solve problems. And species that make a living by killing human civilians are problems that we solve permanently." The displays behind him showed the systematic nature of humanity's response. Every species that had participated in the Harvest Circle faced the same fate. Every corporation that had bought salvage from human colonies at below-market prices found their trade routes suddenly defended by human battle fleets. Every government that had turned a blind eye to raiding fleets discovered that their diplomatic immunity didn't extend to crimes against humanity. Captain Han So-young's intelligence networks had done their job perfectly. Over the past months, they had mapped every connection, every deal, every quiet agreement that had allowed the systematic predation of human space. Arms dealers who had designed weapons specifically for killing humans efficiently found their facilities turned into craters. Mercenary groups that had provided security services to raiders discovered that humans had very long memories and very advanced tracking technology. The Ethereals, ancient beings who had never shown fear in their 10,000-year recorded history, began withdrawing from star systems anywhere near human space. The Void Swimmers, cosmic entities the size of small moons who had roamed the galaxy since before most species developed spaceflight, altered their migration patterns to avoid human-controlled regions. Even the Titans of Andromeda, mechanical beings who could disassemble planets for raw materials, sent desperate diplomatic messages offering non-aggression treaties. But diplomacy was no longer an option for those who had chosen to prey on humanity. President Lee Min-ho, now wearing the uniform of Supreme Commander of Human Space Forces, addressed the galaxy through quantum broadcasts that bypassed every known communication network and security system. "For 2 centuries, you taught us that violence was wrong, that war was primitive, that civilized species resolved their differences through discussion and mediation. We listened, we learned, we became peaceful." His image appeared on screens across thousands of worlds, in council chambers and private homes, even in locations that should have been completely secure from outside broadcasts. Then you systematically preyed upon us while ensuring we couldn't defend ourselves effectively. You turned peace into a weapon against us, and you used our own desire to be civilized as a tool to make us victims. The broadcast showed footage from destroyed human colonies that most galactic citizens had never seen. Children's hospitals bombed while evacuation ships were still loading wounded. Refugee convoys hunted down by raiders who knew the keepers would prevent any serious retaliation. Families torn apart while their own government was forbidden from protecting them properly. We learned your lessons very well. We became exceptionally good at solving problems through violence, better than you ever imagined possible. And now you're going to learn that humans don't forgive, don't forget, and never stop hunting those who hurt our children." As he spoke, human fleets continued their methodical advance through space, moving toward targets that had never directly attacked human territory, but had profited from its suffering. The age of half measures was over. Humanity was settling accounts, and the bill was being paid in blood and ashes. The galaxy had unleashed humanity, and now they were learning that some problems, once solved, stayed solved forever. 5 years had passed since the Covenant ended, and the galaxy barely resembled what it had been before. The old order of controlled chaos and sanctioned predation was dead, replaced by something nobody had expected. Peace. Real peace. Not the fake kind that lets strong species slowly devour the weak while bureaucrats looked the other way. The Galactic Council still existed, but their meetings now took place in the shadow of human battle stations that could turn entire star systems into cosmic dust. These weren't the clunky, obvious weapons platforms that other species built. Human engineering had created structures that looked almost elegant, like crystalline flowers blooming in space, until you realized that each petal was a weapon system capable of cracking planets in half. Fleet Commander Kim Sung-min stood on the bridge of the UES Retribution, watching the tactical displays that showed human fleets positioned throughout known space. Each ship was a promise and a threat rolled into one. The promise was simple: live in peace, trade fairly, treat your neighbors with respect, and humans would leave you alone. The threat was even simpler: hurt innocent people and we will find you. "Commander, we're getting reports from the Kepler sector," his communications officer announced. "The Ravager clans are massing ships near the Altair trade route. Intelligence suggests they're planning raids on civilian shipping convoys." Sung-min pulled up the sector map on his personal display. The Altair route was a major commercial highway that connected 17 different star systems. Millions of beings from dozens of species used it every day to transport everything from food to medicine to entertainment. It was exactly the kind of target that raiders loved, because it was soft, valuable, and usually lightly defended. "What species are operating the shipping convoys?" he asked. "Mixed composition, sir. Ethereal merchant vessels carrying luxury crystals, Bruthan cargo haulers with industrial equipment, and 3 human freight companies transporting medical supplies to the outer colonies." The old Kim Sung-min, the one who had served under the Covenant, would have needed permission from a dozen different agencies just to investigate. He would have been required to file reports, request authorization, and probably wait for some keeper vessel to decide whether human involvement was justified. The new Kim Sung-min had simpler options. Deploy the 7th Fleet to the Altair route. Standard anti-piracy protocols. Any vessel that fires on civilian shipping is to be eliminated immediately. No questions asked. "Sir, what about the non-human ships? Do we have jurisdiction to protect ethereal and Bruthan vessels?" Sung-min's expression didn't change, but there was something almost gentle in his voice when he answered. "Civilians are civilians, Lieutenant. It doesn't matter what planet they were born on or what they look like. Pirates are pirates, and we don't let pirates hurt innocent people. Not anymore." It was the new reality that had shocked the galaxy more than any weapon humanity had deployed. The species that everyone had expected to become galactic tyrants had instead become galactic protectors. Not the fake kind that demanded tribute or political control, but genuine guardians who asked for nothing in return except that people stop murdering each other. Ambassador Park Ji-woo, now serving as the EI, first human galactic representative, maintained offices in what remained of the old council chambers. The building had been rebuilt 3 times since humanity's emergence, each time with better security and more comfortable accommodations for the dozens of species that now came seeking human protection or mediation. Today's visitor was Chancellor Vextar, the ethereal leader whose crystalline form had dimmed considerably over the past 5 years. The ancient being's political influence had crumbled when it became clear that they couldn't stop human expansion, couldn't predict human behavior, and definitely couldn't protect their allies from human justice. Your species has achieved something we believed impossible, Vextar admitted, their voice carrying harmonics of defeat and grudging respect. You have brought order to the galaxy through strength rather than through weakness or compromise. But strength fades, Ambassador Park. Leaders grow old, populations become complacent, military forces lose their edge. What happens when humanity becomes like the rest of us? Jiwoo smiled, but it wasn't a cold or threatening expression. It was the kind of smile a parent might wear when a child asks an innocent question about the world. Chancellor, I think you're still misunderstanding something fundamental about my species. We're not maintaining this peace through strength alone. We're maintaining it because we refuse to forget what happens when good people do nothing while evil spreads. Outside the office windows, the view showed exactly what Jiwoo meant. The rebuilt council station orbited a planet that had once been a Vorthon hive world. Now it was home to refugees from 17 different species, all living together under human protection. Former enemies shared neighborhoods, worked together, and sent their children to the same schools. It wasn't perfect, but it was peaceful in a way the galaxy had never experienced before. Human patrol ships moved between the civilian traffic with casual efficiency, their crews ready to respond to any threat within minutes. But more importantly, there were no threats to respond to. Word had spread throughout the criminal underworld that attacking civilians under human protection was suicide. Not just dangerous or risky, but literal suicide. We teach our children about the colonies that burned while we were forbidden to help, Jiwoo continued. We show them footage of families torn apart by raiders who knew we couldn't fight back. We make sure every generation understands exactly what the galaxy was like before we took responsibility for fixing it. The human fleet continued its eternal patrol, watching over trade routes that had once been hunting grounds for pirates. Children of every species in the galaxy could go to sleep, knowing that somewhere in the darkness human ships stood ready to protect them from monsters. The galaxy had feared what would happen when humanity went to war. Instead, they learned that humans didn't make war at all. They made justice permanent and absolute. And for the first time in galactic history, that was enough.